Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to bring you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
This episode is brought to you by the Become a Super Learner Masterclass. Now, I've been telling you guys about the masterclass for a few weeks now, so I'm actually just going to take a step back and let a good friend of mine tell you guys about his opinion on the masterclass.
Hi, I'm Nelson Dellis, four-time USA memory champion and a huge fan of the Super Learner Masterclass. You know, when I started memory techniques years ago, I wish that I had all the resources that are available on this course. Jonathan does a great job teaching it, and it's a fantastic course, and I highly recommend it. It'll take you just as far as I am without as much time that I had to put in. So enjoy it, get into it, and keep your memory active.
To learn more, to sign up for a free trial with no credit card required, or to redeem an exclusive discount for podcast listeners only, please visit jle.vi/learn or visit becomeasuperlearner.com. Greetings, super friends, and welcome to today's show. You guys, today we are joined by an author, educator, and public speaker, and an expert on influence. For over 15 years, my guest today has been helping people improve their communications and influence skills, but also discovering their passion, discovering who they are and what they should be doing in life and on this planet, which I think is a wonderful, wonderful calling to pursue. You guys, she was the top trainer for the legendary Tony Robbins. And if you haven't heard of Tony Robbins, I don't even know where to begin telling you who he is and what he does. But since she has branched out into her own business, she's been offering workshops that help people transform and grow. She's also the author of Supreme Influence, Change Your Life with the Power of the Language You Use. And she's an expert in something called NLP, or Neuro-Linguistic Programming. So in this episode, we are going to talk about the different ways that you can become superhuman in your mission and in your passion, different ways that you can overcome limitations. As you guys heard in the beginning of the show, we are about the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And a lot of what you might think is impossible for you is that way because of limiting beliefs. So to help us overcome some of these beliefs and just to kick more ass, I am pleased to introduce Niurka. Niurka, welcome to the show. I am so excited to have you here with us today.
I'm excited to be here with you.
Yeah, so I understand that you just completed a pretty epic training in San Diego. Tell us a little bit about that, and figure we can learn a little bit about what you do and how it is that you've become such an expert by virtue of that more recent example.
Absolutely. Actually, I do lead a lot of trainings. This one is more of an experience.
Oh, cool.
It's my 3-day spiritual retreat, especially for women. It's called Goddess Garden. And it is a journey of alchemy being transforming any lead that the women have, either physically or emotionally or metaphorically in their life, into gold, being the embodiment of each one's true potential. And in this experience, we had just beautiful, amazing women come from all over the world. And we worked with archetypes to have each woman embody the full essence of who we are in our businesses and in our relationships and with sisterhood and in all of our creations.
I love that. I have to admit, Niurka, I'm a pretty big sucker for a very strong, confident woman who's, successful in her career and successful in her life. It's kind of my soft spot. So let me ask, how do you go about doing that?
I don't know if you go about doing it as much as you go about being it.
Yes.
So it's really coming into an awakening of who you are. And I mean, to me, that's what it really means to be superhuman. It's to know thyself. And so many times people get caught up in a box of thinking that they are a particular way. I hear it so many times where someone will say, well, that's just the way I am. But who we are cannot be contained by any one identity. Who we are has infinity within us. So this experience guides women to absolutely tune into, their courage, their gifts, but also their feminine essence, their power in business, their deeper relationships with other women, with men, and with our world.
That sounds fantastic. And it sounds like there's a wonderful element of this kind of ego dissociation, that you're not your job and you're not your childhood problems and you're not any of that stuff. You're much, much more. And those are kind of details, which I think was one of the largest lessons that I learned in my adult life about myself.
Yeah, definitely being able to step outside the story and perceive it from an expanded state of awareness brings healing. Matter of fact, one of the exercises that we bring into this experience is we guide women to look at the story of their life and elevate it into the realm of myth. And one of the things that we end up finding is how each woman's story is mirrored in the field, the traumas and the experiences that we've all had. So it's definitely very powerful to dissociate from that and see it from an expanded point of view.
Absolutely. So give us a bit of background about yourself. I know you started out working with Tony Robbins' company, but trace a little bit your path and how you came to do what you do today.
Sure. It started with some frustration, I would say, is what launched my quest, and a knowingness that who I was destined for greater things than what was showing up in my life in the early years. I mean, I was really frustrated. And by the time I was 15, I embarked on a quest for freedom and for enlightenment, except I used to call it running away from home back then. Knowing that there was something greater for me to create, but really not having mentors or a path. And by the time I was 19, I had the great fortune of traveling with Tony Robbins. And there were a few steps along the way to get there, but by the time I began working with him, I lived in 16 different cities over a 5-year period. And that was a profound initiation into beginning to realize the power that not only I have inside of me, but that each one of us has to transform our circumstances and to create life by design. And that's what I saw. I witnessed people transforming their life in a short period of time. And instantly, it just ignited my soul and my passion. And I knew that my gift was in that area to help people break through blocks or limitations and to create from an authentic place of their own gift, because each person has a gift that no one else in the universe has. And when they're living the full embodiment of that, our whole world elevates and it's the juiciest, most fun experience. So that was the opening for me, where I got a taste. And then I knew this is why I'm here.
I love that. And so we had Gretchen Rubin on the show, and she said something that's really stuck with me, which is that everybody needs a guru, or everybody has their guru. And my guru, one of my many gurus, I guess, is Eckhart Tolle, and this realization that once you get in line with your life's purpose, everything just falls into place, and suddenly you're not a fish swimming upstream. I just sense that you're someone who has seen that happen in so many people's lives. Do you have a particular story that's really, really touched you in your career, that someone has come to a training or an event or a workshop and has just come with so much lead and walked away with so much gold?
Oh my goodness, I have so many stories like that.
I love it. Let's have one.
Absolutely. I just came through witnessing story after story in our women's experience in San Diego over the weekend. And, one of the beautiful goddesses who was sitting right next to me, she's someone who I met years ago. She walked into the course feeling really just conflicted with her path, navigating fertility issues and navigating challenges in her business, where she felt that she was really living two lives. She felt that, she had this real estate career and that was what she was doing professionally. But deep down, she was really this artistic, creative soul who actually was a fire performer and a hoop master. And so she was having difficulty integrating these multidimensional aspects of who she was and feeling very conflicted in that. And through the work that she's done with us, she was able to bring her joy, her creativity into her business in a way that allowed them to merge. And then actually rise from that, where last year she's become so connected with our community that she was on the road 45 days out of the year in service to our work. And simultaneously, her business grew to such a degree that she became the number 5 person within her office out of 300 agents, was breaking records. And the most beautiful thing is it was while doing what she loved and having more free time.
So she reconnected to the hobby, and at the same time that allowed her business and professional and family life to thrive.
To completely thrive from a soulful place. I mean, I could give you examples. I have one gentleman recently who I spoke at his yearly event. He asked me to be the keynote speaker because he listened to one of my CDs that, interestingly enough, sat on his desk like a paperweight. He doesn't even remember how he got it. And then one day he starts commuting and he starts listening to this CD that brings him into a heightened state of awareness about how he's communicating, not only to other people, but how he's communicating with himself. And he started listening to just that one CD over and over again. And it shifted the way in which he spoke, and it shifted that little voice inside his head. And he said within 90 days, his opportunity, the pipeline of his business grew by $50 million in 90 days.
Wow.
And he said, Nurka, it was a result of the questions that I was asking, of the statements that I was making. So there's stories that I can share with you that lead to financial, measurable results. And then there's the deep stories that lead to, fulfillment. I just had one lady who sat in the back of the room, just experienced a lot of trauma in her early years. And she was in the back kind of hiding a little bit. And you could sense it in her physiology. And she went through the experiences and it was like she broke out of her shell and it was this shining light. And now she's going around, she's become one of the most just loving figures in our community, where she's coming with such abundance and graciousness, and she's giving, coming from a place of total giving rather than what am I not getting in my life.
I love it. I just thought of a question as you were speaking. So I'm thinking a lot lately about habits, and there's all these wonderful books that so many millions of people have read, from the Rockefeller Habits to the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. I'm wondering if there were a book called the Niurka Habits, what would some of those habits be? Nailing down, for example, wake up every morning, write in your gratitude journal or something like that. What would be some of the habits that these individuals learn from you that empower them to be so much more full of life?
Absolutely. The Nurka lifestyle practices, the supreme lifestyle practices.
So that's a thing already.
To me, it's all about lifestyle. It's how are you living your life day to day? So, for example, the evening to me is very important. Even if you look at the original transliterations of the book of Genesis, the day begins in the evening. And a lot of times people wait till the morning to start setting up their day. And, I teach the way that you end your day sets the stage for what's going to happen that following day, especially because while you're sleeping, your consciousness is integrating based on what you've been fueling it that night before. So really coming into a place of stillness is important to me before I go to bed, coming into that space of meditation and that space between the notes, if you will, of thought, coming into that gap of stillness. And reading something that is continually reading multiple books. So reading something that is of deep, soulful attunement is something that I do before I go to bed. And then waking up in the morning and again, having that still meditation, just pausing before you enter into the busyness of the day. I love my quiet mornings.
Oh, yeah.
They're treasured for me.
I love it.
Yeah. And there's so many other things that are lifestyle practices. Like one lifestyle practice is that I'm mindful of how I think and what I speak. So, I observe my thoughts throughout the day. That's just a habit. It's just a practice. If something's coming up, I look at that from an observer point of view, whether it's, if I have a moment where I go, okay, here's a certain challenge, let's say, for example, that I'm navigating in business. I'll look at that. I'll observe my thoughts around that. And then I'll become clear with my intention. What is it that's most important right now? What is it that I'd like to bring into existence here? I have a continual elevated inquiry with myself in the presence of whatever shows up in my business.
I love that. We have so many extraordinary superhumans on the show, and I love to point out to my audience that the secrets to success and happiness, like everyone who's figured it out, it's a lot of the same stuff. It's meditation, it's reading books, it's gratitude. And I think no matter which direction you come at it from and which kind of messenger speaks to you, whether it's, Deepak Chopra or Tony Robbins or Niurka or anyone, that message is out there and it's tried and true, right? And there's an N equals many kind of source of information that shows that, look, this stuff works. Being grateful, being mindful works.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Bringing your unique essence into it. If you were going to call it a practice, because there's meditation and there's gratitude practices. And ultimately, this is all coming from a place of love and allowing love and harmony to flow through all of your relationships and all of your creations. Then I would say it's, how do you bring your gift into the world? And have that be your habit and practice, to bring your gift into the world in a way that creates value and that creates beauty and that creates prosperity and that contributes towards bringing even more possibility into people's lives. That's what I would be most inspired to have everyone bring, and to bring it at a level of excellence. That's something that I would say is a habit, if you will, since I was at a very young age, is how do you create things and put your heart, mind, and soul into it, where it's not just something that you created. It's the absolute greatest manifestation of your infinite nature.
I love it. And I love the way that you put it with so much energy. I want to ask you, I saw that you also, a lot of what you teach, or a part of what you teach, is NLP, or neuro linguistic programming. And I was super interested because I know, I have to admit, little vulnerability on my side. I know about NLP because I read, Neil Strauss's book, The Game, and they're talking about how people can use this stuff for good or for bad, but it's a very powerful technique. And I think especially in the way that we speak with others and completely changing the way that others perceive us and the way that we perceive ourselves. So I wanted to get your take, as someone who's not in the pickup community, but rather in the communication skills, life skills community. Tell us a little bit about your viewpoints on NLP. Explain maybe a little bit to our audience what it is and how it works and why it's important.
Absolutely. When I teach NLP, I put the word evolved in front of it. I call it evolved NLP. And the reason why I call it that is because when I lead it, it's guided with the wisdom of the heart and the wisdom of love, and the wisdom that at the most fundamental level, we're all connected here. And that what you give to another is something that flows through you. So you're really giving it to yourself. So NLP traditionally is the study of human excellence. It creates models for human excellence that someone, for example, if someone felt stuck, they could utilize these models to transcend from a problem state into a possibility state. NLP also studies the underlying structure or the hidden determinants of human behavior. In other words, what makes people do what they do? How can it be that you could have one person in a certain environment who's struggling and another person in a similar environment who can transcend that struggle and produce consistent, outstanding results? What's the difference that makes the difference? And then offers techniques to bridge the gap. Now, NLP, you could think of it as a tool. And just like any tool, a tool can be used for good or for something that isn't, based on the consciousness of the one that's wielding that tool. So if you think about a hammer, you could use a hammer to build a house. You could use a hammer to build a school. You could use a hammer to build a prison, or you could use a hammer to build a temple. So what is built, through the virtue of that hammer, if you will, is based on the consciousness of the one who wields it. That's why it's so essential to come into an understanding of the most essential question, which is, who are you? Who are you? Who are you at a soul level? Because as we come to the understanding of that question and answer that question, then we come to realize that we can only use any powerful tool from a state of love, because anything less than that will just bring disconnect and suffering to all people involved.
I see. So can you give us an example of an NLP technique that someone might practice either with themselves or with someone that they care about in their lives in a positive way? How could someone actually practically use that tool for good?
I could give you many. So for example, I teach a 5-day course called Supreme Influence in Action. And I teach it twice a year. And one of the techniques that I guide there is how to transform limiting beliefs. And we transform these limiting beliefs, not by talking about them. A lot of times you can go to therapy and talk about your problem, and there can be some resolution with that. Sometimes it's good to just air something out that's been buried. But if you keep talking about a problem without a strategy to transcend it, you could actually recrystallize that problem, because we speak things into existence, and it can, become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Mm-hmm. So this particular technique, for example, doesn't focus on the content of a belief, of a limiting belief. It focuses on how is that belief stored. So let's say somebody has a limiting belief. Give me an example of a limiting belief, and I'll give an example of how to use NLP to transform it.
I'm not entrepreneurial. I don't have the skills or the risk-taking behavior to start a business.
Okay, there you go. So if somebody has that belief, then that's showing up in their day-to-day life, whether they're consciously aware of it or not. Well, that belief has structure. Okay, and what does that mean? That as they think about that belief, usually unconsciously, that belief has pictures, sounds, feelings. There's a structure to that belief. So what I do in this process is I will elicit the structure of that limiting belief. How are they storing it at the subconscious level? And then we can find a belief. This is kind of an advanced one, Jonathan, but I know you're ready for it because you're you.
I'm ready.
And that your listeners are too. We can elicit the structure of a belief that used to be true, but no longer is. So everybody in life has a certain belief that for them, it used to be true. It used to grip them, but it's not true anymore. It's just something from the past. So I'll ask my audiences, what's a belief that used to be true, but isn't? And someone might say, well, I used to believe in Santa Claus or whatever. Well, doesn't it make sense that a belief that used to be true, but it's not true anymore, has a different structure at the level of consciousness than a limiting belief that actually grips somebody and takes them out of their power? Mm-hmm. So what would happen if we took an existing limiting belief and actually moved it into the structure of a belief that used to be true, but is no longer true?
Wow. As you say that, that's digging up some stuff for me. And like I said, the first time I read The Power of Now or A New Earth, essentially it broke me, to be completely honest with you. And it was exactly that, because it was taking these things that I'd believed for 20 plus years. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, Santa doesn't exist. Or in this case, oh my God, I am not my career and my witty humor and my intelligence. None of those things actually are who I am. And it broke me. But then from there, now I look at it as, I used to believe that. And, you can laugh and smile. I used to believe in Santa Claus.
Exactly. And the level of freedom that comes with that and the possibility that comes with that, it is infinite. And the beautiful thing about the way that we guide it in my courses is that each individual leaves not only with their own transformation, but they leave with a specific tool that they can then turn around and be able to bring into a space to support others who are in that same conversation. So it gives them practical, proven techniques. And I'll share with you another example. Like if somebody has an experience that shows up in their life that triggers a disempowering sequence of events, let's say that there's a certain person that calls you or a specific thing that happens or something that goes on in your day that triggers you, or somebody that can push your buttons and then a sequence of events happens. These techniques give you a way to literally catch yourself and create a new possibility rather than just going down that same old pattern, which from a neurological perspective, it gives you tools to stop going down that same neuro pathway in the brain and quite literally create a new neuro pathway, which leads to new actions and ultimately new results.
So it almost touches back on the same element of habit, really.
It does. What are habits? Habits definitely have neural pathways. It's something that you do continuously over a period of time. And then this neural pathway is created. So even though in the midst of infinite possibilities, a person continues to go down that same trajectory. Mm-hmm. So yes, these tools allow you to quite literally dissolve habits more rapidly than I've ever seen them dissolve with other tools. And I don't just teach, like I said, straight NLP. I bring in a lot of different modalities. My studies and the research that I've done is pretty vast. So I bring in different aspects of meditation and yoga and timeline therapy and energy work and a number of different modalities to create the greatest result. Because when I look at an individual, I look holistically. I mean, we're mind, body, spirit. We're all of these aspects integrated into who we are. So it's not just about approaching it mentally. One of the beautiful experiences that unfolds in our courses is there's such a vibration of complete unconditional love that it opens people up to release things that they didn't feel safe releasing before.
Incredible. As you were speaking, I was thinking about the habits, and I recently read Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit. He spends so much time in the book talking about habits and how they're these all-powerful things in the brain, and how even people who've had severe brain damage to the point where they can't learn anything new, they completely forget things after minutes. Somehow they're able to develop habits or keep habits even after they've forgotten their own names. And so if you have this habit, I guess what I'm realizing, if you have this habit of limiting belief, that's way more powerful than your spirit or your energy or anything like that. You have to change the habit first and foremost, I think.
Well, I wouldn't say that your habit is more powerful than your spirit.
Yeah, that might be an exaggeration.
Yeah, but I would definitely say that the habit takes over to where the person becomes disconnected from their spirit and unable to tap into the source of their very existence. So what it does is it clouds them. It's like a big cloud that's hovering over that creates this sense of separation. And that's where pain comes in, or the inability to manifest or achieve or create results that bring you joy and fulfillment, because it's not such a function of, okay, I need to create these results. It's a function of I'm tapped into who I am and there's no blocks to that. And I'm creating from this inspirited place.
And I think you can feel that. When other people experience that, they can feel it. And when you meet someone who's just completely secure in what their role is on this planet, you feel it.
Totally. They're secure in who they are and what their role is. And they're creating from that soulful place. They're not just creating because, they're trying to hit that mark. And listen, I'm very goal oriented also. That's important to me, and it has. But when that becomes the focal point, as opposed to, who I am and what I'm bringing to the world, it's a very different manifestation.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask, what do you think is the most common mistake that people are making when it comes to communication and influencing others? On that note of how do we create an impact with others? How do we make that impression with others and reflect security and confidence?
The most common mistake. Assuming that communication happened.
Oh, that's such a good one for me right now. Do go on.
Yes. I think it was George Bernard Shaw, if I'm remembering a quote that said, the biggest mistake in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. So just because you've talked doesn't mean communication has happened. It's having the sensory awareness and acuity to recognize how is your communication being received in another person's map of the world. And having the compassion and the behavioral flexibility to change your communication, until you have authentic understanding. So the first is don't assume that communication happened. Secondly is don't make it about the other person. So many times I see someone point outside themselves and give reasons why another person is or isn't showing up, or a certain thing is or isn't showing up in their life. And in life, you either give reasons or you create results. And anytime that we put the cause of something outside of ourselves, and examples of that are blaming or justifying or trying to make other people wrong or trying to be right. Anytime we make it about another person, we're not evolving. So the first thing that I would say is take full ownership for your communication and how it's being received. And a thing that you can say to yourself for the listeners is that my communication is the response I get. So, because two people can say a similar thing in two different ways, and one gets resistance and the other one brings this authentic alignment. What's the difference? It's not just the actual message. It's the energy behind the message. It's the words that were chosen. It's the presupposition in those statements that determine how it's received. So take ownership and be flexible. If you don't get the response, if you receive resistance, be flexible and change your approach.
Definitely. Although I'm wondering how you reconcile that with something that I learned last year, which really dramatically actually changed my perception of human emotion, which is very simple. And in the strangest context, someone explained to me that everyone is responsible for their own emotions. And it was in this that he said, this person didn't break your heart. This person did what was right for them or what they felt was right for them. And your heart was broken. And those two events are separate. So how do we reconcile this, being clear about communication while still understanding that sometimes people are going to be hurt by our words or by our actions. And we don't want that to happen, but we have to accept the fact that, they have agency. They have a right to feel however they want to feel, but that's not, unless that was our intention, that's not on us.
You want to be aware of what's coming up for you in the presence of that conversation. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, if you're communicating with another person, the highest choice would be to be mindful to communicate whatever it is that you're communicating in such a way that creates the greatest result for all parties involved. I mean, sure. That's like the bigger picture where you're not just thinking about you and them and you're in this polarized perception about you and them, but you can kind of rise above that and go, okay, what's the greatest way for me to deliver this message? In honoring, really it's a sense of honoring all parties involved. So let's say that you're in an intimate relationship, but you decide this just isn't working for you and you've come real clear where you've, looked at different alternatives and it's not in alignment with who you are and your values and the direction you're heading and what's most important to you in your life. Well, I mean, you could just say, you know what, I'm done with you. And that wouldn't be the highest choice because it's not really taking into consideration the bigger picture. Possibly, we don't know based on the intricacies of that particular relationship, but I would invite someone to, look at the bigger picture and how can they communicate the authenticity of what's true for them to the other person in an honoring way. And then the second thing would be whatever comes up for you, you take ownership for that. So let's say the other person responds in a certain way. You're not taking their stuff on. You're being totally present to what's coming up for you in the presence of it. And if what's coming up for you is, let's say I'm feeling sad or I'm feeling hurt or I'm feeling whatever that may be, or I'm feeling clear that this doesn't work. The greatest insight for you and your evolution, you being the person who's communicating, is based on what's coming up for you. If you make it about the other person, you did this, you're not doing that, you never listen, that's where evolution stops.
Right. And, that was such a breakthrough for me, that just the concept that nobody has ever hurt me. People have done things and I have been hurt. And it's not, it's not saying that it's a rational choice to be hurt, but it's acknowledging that because of me and because of my unique history and because of what is painful for me or not painful or sensitive or whatever, it's that those two actors acted separately and acknowledging that.
What's so beautiful about what you're saying, and there's actually a term for this in NLP. It's called complex equivalence. And what it means is that two things are made to mean the same thing or are made to be equal. So like you did this means you don't love me, or you did this means this. And they're really two separate things that are interpreted to be one and the same. And you hear this in language because the presuppositions often illuminate that someone is making two things that really don't have anything to do with themselves, one and the same. And that's where people get stuck. They're taking something personal and making it about themselves where that's really not the truth about the bigger picture.
Right. I was talking to a friend recently and she said, well, he did this. So he obviously, I was like, stop right there. Not obvious. That's not the case. That's obvious to you, maybe not obvious to him. And, that so he or so she or so they, I think that disconnect is really important. Niurka, I wanted to ask, a big question, which I think a lot of people think about, myself included, which is what makes a person influential, powerful, or persuasive to others. I think a lot of us want to be leaders. A lot of us want to be that dynamic boss or that dynamic manager, that dynamic entrepreneur that people just want to follow and that people want to get behind and support. How do we do that?
We don't do that. We are that. We live it. It's not a doing. I think that's where a lot of people get confused. It's like they feel like it's something that they need to do. It's not a doing. I am that. So the way to be influential, as you described, is first to know thyself. Who are you? When you know who you are and you authentically live in the embodiment of that and you create from this integrated place within yourself, you are influential. There's nothing that you're doing per se. It's not like you got to go learn this strategy so that you can then be influential. You become like a tuning fork and you begin to attract people and experiences into your life that harmonize with your same essence, your core. The nucleus of who you are, your core values. And then you are influential, not as a function of what you're doing, but as a function of who you're being. And those that are in alignment with that want to play with you. They want to be a part of it. They show up consistently. Then you think and you speak and you act from this space of congruency. So I would say what really creates a leader is a sense of congruency. And what I mean by that is that their thoughts, their words, their actions are aligned with who they really are consistently. And that brings power. It's not power over a person or thing, because power over something isn't real power. Power over something is really control, often stemming from fear, masked in the illusion of power. This is something that needs nothing because you are that. And Interestingly, in the beginning, we talked about meditation, and it's the same thing. A lot of times people are doing meditation. How many times do I have people walk up to me and they go, Nurka, how do I meditate? Well, that question presupposes this strategic step of meditation, where true meditation is a state of being. It's not an action that you sit in lotus position and touch your four fingers to your thumbs. That's part of it, but it's deeper than that. True authentic meditation is living in the awareness of the undifferentiated nature that, the essence of life that flows in as and through all things. And from that, you transcend this feeling of duality and you live in this unified field, and then you create from this place. So who are you being? I would invite people to ask, who are you being before what do I need to do?
Wow. Okay. I'm going to need to digest that. I have a feeling our audience is going to need to hit the skip back button and listen to that twice, because there's a lot to digest there. And I think, especially with the meditation and this idea of separating, on that topic of our audience and how they can act upon this stuff, I want to ask, we really like to give homework. I'm kind of evil in that regard. I'm an online educator, so I like to give homework. And we've talked about so many different points, and they all ultimately come down to, or boil down to, know yourself, know exactly who you are and how you are. And I sense also a big element of accept yourself. So I wanted to ask Nurka, how can we give our audience a piece of homework that they can practice today to better know themselves, or really start to know themselves in that authentic way that you described?
Absolutely. Well, first, I'm going to give everyone who's listening a gift. I'm going to give you a video. So that can be your homework, so it's not evil. Awesome. So you could watch this video. The video is going to give you 3 specific secrets on how you can communicate in a way that brings understanding and inspires action. And just go to supremeinfluence.com/becoming superhuman, supremeinfluence.com/becoming superhuman, and then listen and watch that video. And it's going to give you 3 specific secrets, and then you can take action on those 3 specific secrets. I don't want to give them away because they're very clearly on this video. It's about a 25-minute video. And then you can go on my Facebook page, which is facebook.com Niurka Inc. You'll see it on my website. And let me know what you learned. So you can share with me what specifically you took action on from that video and how it's impacted your business and life. And I'll just give you one little tip on them. One of the insights there is the power of asking questions. And I give you specific insights on how you ask questions, because we're asking questions all day long. And a lot of times these questions are outside of conscious awareness. Well, every question that you ask contains embedded assumptions that are usually outside of conscious awareness. And these embedded assumptions that are called presuppositions, they presuppose the existence of something. They signal your brain to go and find things that are in alignment with what you're declaring. So even though we're in this universe of infinite possibilities, often people keep recreating the same experience of reality in the midst of infinite possibilities. And part of that is because they keep asking the same questions. So as you expand your awareness and ask better questions, you get expanded results and juicier experiences in your life.
As Einstein said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. Fantastic. Nurka, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I definitely took away some inspiration. As I told you before our call, it's been a little bit of a long week, and I'm feeling a little bit beat down and stressed out. So I'm really thankful, and I'm sure our audience is thankful for you sharing your energy and enthusiasm with us. And just to reiterate for everyone in the audience, do please go ahead and check out those free videos. We'll link to them in the blog post as well, but then you can also check them out on the link that Niurka gave you. Niurka, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you today.
It has been wonderful. I'm looking forward to meeting all the people that are on the call. It's been wonderful being with you, and they can check us out at supremeinfluence.com.
Awesome.
So thanks for having me. This was fun.
My pleasure. Let's keep in touch.
Okay. Take care. Lots of love. Mwah.
All right, super friends, that's it for this week's episode. We hope you really, really enjoyed it and learned a ton of applicable stuff that can help you go out there and overcome the impossible. If so, please do us a favor and leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or however you found this podcast. In addition to that, we are always looking for great guest posts on the blog or awesome guests right here on the podcast. So if you know somebody, or you are somebody, or you have thought of somebody who would be a great fit for the show or for our blog, please reach out to us either on Twitter or by email. Our email is info@becomingasuperhuman.com. Thanks so much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.becomingasuperhuman.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.